What's up, everyone? It's Nader here with TWSN, and today I'll be breaking down UFC 264 and giving my predictions for the whole card. The highly anticipated event takes place this Saturday in Las Vegas, and I couldn't be more excited for it. Without further ado, let's get into it. Hu Yaozong versus Alan Amadoski. To start off the night in Vegas, we have two middleweights squaring off. Hu Totoro Yaozong is a Chinese native that has an MMA record of 3-2, yet is 0-2 in the UFC. He's been out of the game for a while, with his last fight being against Rashad Coulter at UFC Beijing in November of 2018, on the same fight night card as Francis Ngannou and Curtis Blades. Yaozong was suspended by the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency, also known as USADA, for 10 months after a positive test of a banned substance over 2 years ago, explaining his extended leave from the sport. Yaozong has an interesting history, fighting at both heavyweight and light heavyweight during his time in the UFC. On the other hand, Alan Amadoski is a seasoned veteran who hasn't been able to get a win yet in the UFC, but has seen success in other major promotions like Bellator, where he was 2-0 with 2 first-round stoppages, totaling an impressive record of 8-2. Yaozong has been beaten in rather ugly fashion in his last 2 fights and actually does not have his coaches in his corner this match due to visa issues. His weak striking and takedown defense make him vulnerable, and especially without his coaches, I don't see how you can bet against Amadoski. Zagat Zumagula versus Jerome Rivera. 2 flyweights take the octagon for the second of 4 early prelims. These 2 men are fighting for roster spots, and this can very well be one of their last fights in the promotion. First off, let's talk about Zagat Zumagulov. The Kazakhstani fighter poses a winless record in the UFC, but is known for his counter-striking and intensity in the close range. He faces a much taller opponent in Jerome Rivera, who's known for his over-eager pace. The Renegade Rivera saw a win on Dana White's Contender Series, but simply has too many holes in his defensive game. Zumagulov can use leg kicks to back up the high-paced fighter, while he uses his counter-striking in an octagon that is 30% larger than one he would have used at the Apex, which benefits his style. This matchup screams lopsided, and I'm taking Zumagulov for the win. Omari Akhmeda versus Brad Tavares. The second middleweight matchup of the night holds 2 better-known names in Omari Akhmedov and Brad Tavares. The number 13 and 15 ranked fighters respectively in the 185 division pose an interesting matchup that can go either way. Brad Tavares has fought some of the division's best throughout his career, with Israel Adesanya, Robert Whittaker, and Yoel Romero, all being matchups that ended in a loss for him. Tavares is a good striker with solid takedown defense, but has a tendency of backing up in his fights. On the other hand, Akhmedov is a sambo wrestler that has an equally impressive ability to strike. He has a solid chin and likes to engage and back down fighters, which can be trouble for Tavares. The Dagestani Russian is also known for his vicious ground and pound, which can pose a threat to the Hawaiian fighter. The only thing that can hurt Omari is his cardio, so he should look to finish Tavares early on in the fight. Being a pressure fighter, Akhmedov has to be careful of sudden unexpected strikes while shooting for a takedown or simply walking Tavares down. With that being said, I'll be leaning towards the Wolverine for this exciting fight and could see it going to a 29-28 decision. Jennifer Maia versus Jessica Eye. 2 top 7 UFC women's flyweights round out the end of the early prelims, and in all honesty, should give fans a one-sided fight. Jessica Eye hasn't been the same after getting KO'd stiff by one of the best fighters to ever live in Valentina Shevchenko. She's gone 1-3 in her last 4, recently losing to Joanne Calderwood and Cynthia Cavillo. The high-ranked Maia, who's currently the humble favorite, should easily be able to get past Jessica Eye, who hasn't been able to stay consistent during her time at the top of the division. Eye is an average defender for someone who constantly moves into battle range. She's tough, but toughness isn't going to get you a win over an all-around talented fighter like Maia, who's a takedown threat, is great on the ground as a submission/ground-and-pound specialist, and has beautiful hand speed as a former boxer. This should be an easy fight for the Brazilian, further securing her spot in the elites of the division. Trevin Giles versus Dricus du Plessis. The first late prelim fight of the night should provide a very entertaining start to the midpoint of this stacked card. This fight was originally planned for UFC Vegas 23, Vettori vs. Holland, but was cancelled due to travel issues on du Plessis' part. It's a classic matchup of striker versus grappler, and I have du Plessis, the striker, beating Giles in impressive fashion. The South African fighter has an unorthodox striking style that incorporates a lot of movement and interesting angles that could lead to Giles having a tough time taking him down and an even tougher time on the feet. Dricus is a big fighter with heavy hands that is very good in the clinch, which helps this case to win the fight, especially if it goes against the cage. For example, in the main event of the night's second fight, Conor McGregor was able to hurt Dustin Poirier with shoulders in the clinch, although he was the one that got taken down. This could help du Plessis' case if it happens, whether Giles gets the takedown or not. Trevin Giles is coming off an extremely questionable win, while du Plessis is coming off an impressive first-round KO debut. The momentum should be on his side, and I'm taking Du Plessis to win the fight. Brian Hall versus Ilia Topuria. Next on the list, we have an exciting featherweight clash featuring household name Brian Hall and a scary rising fighter in Ilia Topuria. Brian Hall is a third-degree BJJ black belt that's an impressive track record, with wins over big names like BJ Penn and Gray Maynard. The Wizard hasn't fought in almost 2 years to the day, and bringing him back to fight a guy like El Matador isn't ideal. He has won 3 out of his 4 fights in the UFC, and had quite the amount of hype around his name. Now, let's talk about his opponent. Topuria is a finisher. In 10 pro fights, he has an undefeated record with 7 submission wins and 2 knockouts. He has a higher significant strikes per minute rate with better accuracy than his counterpart and absolutely destroys Hall in takedown attempts for 15 minutes with a difference of 3.93. His takedown defense is also stellar with 100% accuracy. Topuria also goes for just about 3 more submissions per fight as a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt himself. Topuria beats Hall in pretty much every category and should be an easy favorite to stay undefeated. Nico Price versus Michael Pereira. One of my favorite matchups of the night comes in the welterweight division, where 2 show-stopping fighters meet in the octagon for an ultimate fan favorite matchup. Nico Price is a wild brawler known for his ability to find a knockout at any moment in the fight. He has impressive wins over fighters like Randy Brown and recently beat Donald Cerrone, only for it to be overturned after a failed drug test, where he tested positive for marijuana and was suspended for 6 months. Price is 6-4-2 in the UFC and has shown promise, but his opponent won't allow his return to be a triumphant one. Michael Pereira, the man that got famous for doing stunts and backflipping mid-fight, is the better fighter of the two and should take home the win with ease. When you break it down, the 2 fighters aren't even necessarily close. Demolidor Pereira leads Price in significant strikes landed per minute, takedown accuracy, and takedown defense, as well as significant strikes absorbed per minute and significant strike defense rate by a significant margin. Pereira is a more patient, mature fighter that's realized that it's time to get serious, and he'll improve his stock with a win over Price. Carlos Condit versus Max Griffin. The last prelim fight of the card, and the second of 2 back-to-back welterweight fights, will see the legendary Carlos Condit take on veteran Max Griffin. Condit leads Griffin in strike accuracy, and I believe that will be the name of the game for the natural-born killer. His last 2 wins have been by unanimous decision, with his last KO/TKO coming in 2015, so I don't expect him to knock out his opponent, but I do still have him winning. I believe Condit will use Griffin's overzealousness against him by slowly piecing him up with a jab, scoring the decision victory. Many believe that Griffin has the ability to knock out Condit, but after an impressive win over Matt Brown, the KO leader in UFC history, I simply don't see it happening. Condit absorbs 2.49 significant strikes per minute, which is a refreshing statistic for his fans going into this fight. The natural-born killer will score his 33rd win in his MMA career and cap off an amazing line of prelims. Shawn O'Malley versus Chris Mattinio. The Sugar Show is back for more. One of the biggest stars in the promotion is looking to add another win to his resume as he faces off with UFC newcomer Chris Mattinio. The first fight on the main card was originally scheduled for O'Malley to square off with UFC veteran Louis Smolka, but due to apparent injury, the Hawaiian native pulled out. His next opponent was supposed to be Ricky Simon, but after O'Malley agreed to fight him, Simon came out to say that he wasn't going to be able to make weight. This led us to Chris Mattinio, who's looking to make a splash in his first fight with the MMA leader of the world. According to Mattinio's manager, Tyson Chartier, Mattinio is an aggressive striker with a solid wrestling base and is known for his fan-friendly style of fighting. All 4 of his losses were by stoppage, meaning that he got himself in dangerous situations and didn't get out of them successfully. With all that being said, I have to be honest here and say that O'Malley should be able to easily outclass Mattinio. Sugar Sean is an amazing counter-striker, which can work to his advantage against an aggressive newcomer that's trying to make a name for himself in a tough business. There are levels to this game, and Shawn O'Malley should be able to KO Mattinio without much to worry about. Irene Aldana versus Yana Kunitskaya. The second and final women's fight on the card is a women's bantamweight matchup between 2 high-profile fighters, and Irene Aldana and Yana Kunitskaya. I'm taking Aldana to win this fight for the reason that she has fantastic takedown defense, as well as being the bigger fighter, and is the overall better striker, being one of the best in the division with solid boxing skills. Kunitskaya is much more of a grappler and would love to tire out Aldana, but I don't see it happening. All the signs point to a win for Aldana, despite Kunitskaya having a better record in the UFC, and I believe she will prove that she's one of the most promising fighters in the division, with a win over Yana Kunitskaya. Tai Tuivasa versus Greg Hardy. The only heavyweight fight of the night has the potential to be a fantastic showcase. Hard-hitting former NFL defensive end Greg Hardy looks to take a step up in his competition level by facing Tai Bam Bam Tuivasa. Tuivasa is a respected fighter that has great speed. He has impressive wins over fighters like Steven Struve and Andrei Arlovski, and has an overall record of 12-3 in his MMA career. Greg Hardy is a former NFL player that transformed into a mixed martial artist after success on Dana White's Contender Series. He's always been a fighter that's taken 2 steps back after a step forward though. He's 4-3-1 in the UFC, but has had trouble with cardio and wrestling, which is highlighted after his win against Ben Sassoli, which is overturned since he used an inhaler mid-fight. The only reason people are considering Hardy to win this fight is because of his one-hitter-quitter punches, but Tuivasa has only lost once to a KKO/KO. He took some shots from heavyweight legend Junior Dos Santos and managed to sustain a lot of vicious ground and pound before the fight was eventually stopped. Bam Bam has been working with Daniel Cormier, sharpening his wrestling tools against an opponent with little to no wrestling capabilities. Expect a dominant win for Tai Tuivasa. Gilbert Burns vs. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. One of my personal favorite matchups of the year comes in the co-main spot of the evening and should 100% provide fans with a technical battle that is essentially a title eliminator. The number 2 ranked welterweight contender in the world, Gilbert Burns, will look to redeem himself after coming up short to Kamaru Usman back in February, and will face off with fan favorite and the undisputed nicest fighter in the UFC in Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. In simple terms, the matchup is between a BJJ specialist with heavy hands versus a world-class striker with excellent takedown defense. Wonderboy Thompson, the current favorite, is 100% my pick going into this fight. Not only is Wonderboy, as I said before, very talented at defending takedowns, but facing a fighter that has trouble getting them. Wonderboy has the height and reach advantage over Burns, and has proven to be able to use that to his advantage with his odd, yet extremely effective striking style that saw him piece up Jeff Neal and Vicente Luque, Burns' teammates at Hard Knocks 365. Thompson should follow Leon Edwards' game plan against Bilal Muhammad, where we saw Rocky continuously clip and keep back a tenacious fighter that was shorter in height and reach. Burns also has a suspect chin after getting knocked out by straight punches in his first welterweight title opportunity. Wonderboy should be the clear favorite to win this fight, and after definitively beating Burns, should put himself in the title picture. This main event could not come sooner. The most anticipated fight of the year so far will see two legends square off in a trilogy for all the marbles. To start off, let's talk about Dustin the Diamond Poirier. He's a top 5 UFC lightweight to ever live and certainly one of the best stand-up brawlers in the promotion. He's beaten almost everyone at the top of the division and certainly deserves the recognition as the number 1 lightweight contender. He previously beat McGregor in their rematch after basing his attack on calf kicks, which destroyed McGregor, ended up leading to a flurry of shots that ended the fight. The other man needs no introduction. The most popular mixed martial artist to ever live is looking to redeem himself after he saw him get knocked out for the first time in his UFC career. Although the momentum is all on Dustin's side, I'm taking the Notorious One to win within 2 rounds due to the adjustments he'll make, and I don't think it'll be close. He was in a boxing stance, which led to his lead leg getting destroyed by Dustin, yet he was still able to piece him up and win the first round with ease. Being a newer fan to UFC, it was extremely interesting how quickly the fight turned around, because in my opinion, Conor was winning both rounds before the last exchange ended in a knockout. He'll have to revert to his karate stance, which allows him to move around to avoid leg kicks and counter Poirier, who will leave his body open during exchanges. As Eddie Alvarez said, Dustin ends all of his fights with one huge push of shots, which he did with McGregor back in January. Conor has to let Dustin empty his gas tank with those shots and make sure not to engage, then work from there. The path to a win for the Notorious One is clear, but he'll have to execute it properly to win the trilogy. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and I hope you enjoy Saturday's card. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at TWSN_SBS, and make sure to subscribe and follow all of our socials. Peace.